Welcome to the Get Psyched on Live podcast series. Join me, Lusanda, and co-host David Gawu as we explore mental wellness issues. Psyched is an award-winning app where we identify your unique wellness needs and match you with a suitable therapist at a very affordable rate. In this episode, we'll be looking at men and mental well-being. We will explore the traditional conceptions of being a man, how and why men feel emasculated, and we will also look at ways that men can use in order to change the traditional narrative of being a man, what tools they can use, and lastly, what the power dynamics are for men in the workplace. Let's get psyched on life. Hi folks, it's Lusanda here. Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Get Psyched on Live. I'm not alone, I'm with my co-host, Mr.
Huang. My name is David Carr. Welcome to Get Psyched on Live with Lusanda and David. And this is our second episode. And the guest I wanted to have on the first episode is here today. One of my friends, recently new author, and he's been in advertising for 23 years, and then and that came with a lot. Advertising comes with a lot, which I think led to his new masterpiece and a very good selling book, or a best-selling book called My Genge, We Need to Talk. That means, guys, let's get our shit together. We need to talk about stuff. This is the book. He's here today, Melusi Tshabalala. Am I saying right? Tshabalala.
No, you're not saying it right.
Melusi Tshabalala.
Melusi Tshabalala. Yeah.
The Tshabalala is always confused.
The tea was given to me by Home Affairs when I went to get my ID, and I just never went back.
Are you serious? So it was Tshabalala.
Yeah.
Okay, I've always wondered why some Tshabalalas TS, and then some is TCH, some is CH.
Yeah, it's different.
Must be 3 different assholes working at different Home Affairs offices. There's the CH one, there's the one who adds the T, and then there's another one. But thanks for making it, bro. I appreciate it. And it's a bit weird for me to ask you to particularly be a guest in this episode. I mean, I've asked you to come on my other show as well, to be a guest on my other shows.
Sure.
For, literally for us to chill, have fun, and talk about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But specifically today, because we're trying to deal with mental wellness and well-being. And not just that, the topic is very broad. And today, particularly about men and their mental well-being, right?
Yeah.
And then me wanting you as a guest based on, I know you've been through a lot, I've known you for a long time, but the fact that you've come this far where now you are talking about some of the things, or at least your experiences, both good and bad, which I think we can learn from, and some of the audiences or viewers or listeners will definitely be able to learn from.
Cool. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Why did you write this book in particular? I know it's not your first book. You've got Everyday Zulu.
Yeah. I wrote Melusi's Everyday Zulu.
Yeah. So this is your second this is the second book published.
Yes. This is my second book that was published. And I think before I get into why I wrote the book, I need to clarify something. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a mental health practitioner. Practitioner. I am not an activist. I am not any of those things. I'm just a guy, right?
You don't identify as a polo player or something.
No.
I can call you a guy.
Out, one of my gang, right? But I wrote this book because, there were personal reasons, but then there were external reasons that go beyond me, looking at men, particularly black men, particularly young black men. And I've lived my life surrounded by black men who are my peers. When I think of doing something, the first person that comes to my mind is a black guy, right? That's just been my life. You know, I know some white people. I know some women, but you know, the go-to for anything is black guys. And so I had gone through a terrible period in my life where my marriage had collapsed catastrophically, and I went into a depression, and I was drinking, and I had a shitload of anxiety. And the people that were there for me were the very same black guys. In all manner of ways, you know, some were saying we must kill people, others, you know, it was a range of emotions and suggestions and solutions. But the thing is, they were there for me. And so I decided to write a book about male friendship, you know, about the beauty and the book was meant to be funny, and the book is still funny. But at that same time, in fact, a couple of years before, I started looking at my life and going, you know, I'm anxious all the time. I can't sleep. And I started looking at why, you know, and things felt like they were just spinning out. And I said, let me stop looking externally. Let me look at me, you know, because it's easy to say it's this, it's that person, it's racism, it's apartheid, it's what. Say, okay, let me look. And all those things are there, you know, that they're there. And some of them are not going away. So I said, let me look at me, you know. And when I started really looking at myself, I thought, fuck, you know, I don't really like what I am seeing. And I started working on myself. And so, and then I started looking externally as well, because now I've decided I'm writing this book about black male friendship. But on social media, because I've got a significant social media following because of my everyday Zulu thing. And that's where I'm seeing women, and in particular black women, saying horrible things about black guys. And then I'm seeing those interactions, and I'm seeing the guys not getting it, you know, and not because they're bad people. They're just not understanding what the women are talking about. And there are a variety of reasons for that, right? The first one that I realized is that women are angry, so the guys just shut down, you know. So generally nobody listens to angry people. It's just a human thing that I've observed. If you're shouting at me, I just shut down. You know, I'm not interested, right? The other one is that the people who are leading these conversations don't speak like human beings, right? So guys just have no idea what you're talking about, right? So when you're talking about patriarchy, I'm like, you know, I've never heard such a thing. And so you've got all these high concepts. And people just go, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, and I'll use an example of that. I was in a session where I spoke, it was a conversation between two women, and it had to do with spirituality. And the one woman was speaking about a moon ceremony, right? And I asked if it's witchcraft. And I got attacked. The other woman said, oh, you're saying that because it's women are witches and men are wizards. And I said, hold on, you see, this is the problem. You go to these fancy universities and you do gender studies, but you don't translate that language back to everyday life. In my world, there's no difference between a male witch and a female witch. So when I said it's witchcraft, I wasn't attacking women. In fact, I had to be explained to what the difference between a witch and a wizard is. And so that's what I noticed happens. It's these high concepts that just the average guy doesn't get. You know, it's just not because he's stupid, but it's just not within their frame of reference. And then so I decided, look, I'm still going to write this book about male friendship, but I'm going to also add some serious conversations to it. So I'm going to take these things that are being discussed, and I'm going to try and decode them into everyday guy speak. So I decided to write about issues that are being spoken to, but in a manner that I would want to be spoken to, right? From kinship and empathy, right? Because I understand that why guys are struggling with a lot of these concepts. And I'm saying, hey, look at me, I'm one of you. I'm struggling with these concepts. Let's walk this journey together. And I also acknowledge that there are those who've been walking it, you know, so I'm not saying I'm the first guy to wake up and go, oh my God, let me talk to guys, you know, there are those, but I'm saying, this is my contribution. Let's talk, right? So I try and really decode what people are talking about and just make it everyday guy friendly.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Melusi.
I think that's going to help us with us trying to figure out. I mean, last episode, I said anything I can't find, maybe you've said this before in one of our WhatsApp groups, anything I can't find the word in vernacular, it doesn't exist to me. So depression for me, you asked me the other day if I'm depressed, and I said to you, if I can't translate it into my vernac or South Sutu, it doesn't exist. So I'm already saying I'm not depressed, right? I'm not saying the feelings were not there or the emotions or experience were there, but going back to him saying he decided to break down things into the everyday basic Zulu or English or Tsotsital or my gang talk or slang, which I think might help us with us trying to decode and talk about, mental wellness and depression and seeing therapists, and I mean psychologists and big word, which she's a fully qualified, by the way.
I picked that up.
MBC. We spoke about those.
Yes, those guys.
Yeah.
But Dr. Tumi.
Dr. Rebecca Maluk. Yeah.
No. I'm part of the M gang.
Yeah, okay.
I'm part of the M
Okay,
gang.
cool.
Melusi,
it's
interesting what you've just shared. The motivation behind the book, the experiences that you went through. It actually speaks to what is our topic for today.
Yeah.
And that is, boys don't cry. Or do they? The importance comes in when we look at how the story you share about how context is what would determine how we make sense of things. How the ladies that you were speaking to had this perception, or rather definition, of what a witch is, and you had your own. Ngapha David speaks to how he may have had symptoms of what we would call and label depression, but at the time he did not have the language for it. As we were not there.
Yeah.
So this brings me to a very important one of, and we touched on it in our last episode, of how, we talk about mental wellness, we talk about psychological health, we throw those words around. But what it means for me and for you, Melusi, is not the same, because we come from different contexts.
Yes.
We're just not the same. And so the language that you use for your experience is not the same as mine. And me, as Ulusanda, with my M qualification, I am going to give it a very big word, a very, very, very fancy word. Bottom line, though, is we are here to say we want to be destigmatizing what mental illness is, regardless of the language that you use, regardless of the context from which you actually come from. And I'm just now thinking, just as a first off, for us just to look at, in general, regardless of where we've been, what has been the conception of a man. I say this because I come from a Zulu background where we say indoda ifela ngaphakathi, but we see things when a man dies inside. That's the actual translation in English. Kuthiwa a man must die inside. Boys don't cry. And we grew up hearing some parents who would say to their boy children, hey, don't be a sissy, be a man up. You're not supposed to cry. Jens, what do you make of that?
So before you answer, Melusi,
sure.
One of my ex-employees was my bodyguard, passed on, and not while working for me, but at his funeral, young guy, he was in his 30s, and that was his full-time job. He'd been doing it for years. So at his funeral, I saw like a kid crying, maybe 6, 7 years old, a boy. And I kid you not, and this was the first time I heard this saying, another much older Zulu guy, family member, came to this kid and said, "Indoda haikali, men don't cry." And it was the first time I heard that, and the first time I heard it was this grown man saying this to like a 5, 6 year old, and my mouth was I was just so shocked, and and it's stuck with me for a long time, and then obviously going back to then how you would now I know I don't want to break it to being a Zulu person, but I know there's a huge difference being born or being brought up as a Zulu person and what the definition of man is supposed to be. It's different with Xhosa people. It's different with Sotho people. It's different with Swati people. And for me, it's always then been interesting with, on top of all the bullshit you have to deal with in life, you are also a Zulu man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, I mean, obviously, masculinity is a global concept, and it's governed by global rules. These Zulu, these are just nuances, but the rules of masculinity are global, and that's what makes it dangerous, you see, because you are not just compared to you are compared to Elon Musk, you see. So you are less than Elon Musk, you see, and that's what makes masculinity dangerous. It is unattainable ideals. So I always say it's a scam. We were sold a scam, and if we ourselves don't wake up to this, we will forever remain miserable. If you go to prisons, people are not in there because of murder. It's masculinity. It starts there. Yes, it manifested as those things, but the leading cause of death, of people being in jail, if you go to the cemetery, if they were honest, they'll say he was killed by being a man. Just because, and that's what I speak about in my book, that what we have defined as manhood, we need to interrogate, because not all aspects of it are bad. So masculinity is not a bad thing. But how it has come to manifest in our times and before has become quite dangerous. So what I advocate for is to interrogate, right? Start questioning. I don't have answers. I don't have all the solutions. But I'm just saying, when you wake up and you look at yourself, you go, does everything that I was taught really make sense? Right? And I also think the first step, and this is what I've started trying to do for myself, I don't always succeed, is I approach life as a human being who happens to have a penis, right? So what I mean is I am a human being before I am a man. Because when I start approaching things like that layer of masculinity gets removed, and I'm able to engage
just as a human
being. I don't look at this, how would I approach this as a man? It's like, no. This solution doesn't necessarily need a man. It needs a human being, And the thing is, you're already a man. So, it's what is a good man? You're already a man. So that's a given, right? Maybe work at being a decent human being. And then because you're already a man, you're going to become a decent man.
By default.
But deal with the human being. So that's what I try and do. I really don't deal with this man stuff. It distracts us.
I mean, it took you a while.
Yes, no. I mean, I was always out
thinking about it.
Yeah.
You went through a period where, like I said, how you were brought up, what you're picking up, just living, just being a man and living your life. That this is the way to be a man. I've always believed in providing. Not that I force onto anyone, but I believe that the man has to provide. Right? But lately, I've actually, after now For years, my wife would pick up the kids, drop them at school, take them to extramurals, for years and years. I told myself I'm busy, I'm always working, and obviously I'm working for all these things. And I have to say, for the past few years, I've started saying, if my wife wapopa somewhere and there's some couple of bunch of money or cash, I'm so happy to stay at home. I'm looking forward to the day I can be like, bye-bye, love, see you later. I'll pick up the kids, I'll drop them off, blah, 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 blah. Because I just got to a point where I was just like, this is bullshit. This thing of the man must. Lately I joke, since COVID and people's jobs are gone, I lost, I haven't had gigs. And I tell everyone else, guys, if you're a man, get the fuck out of the house. I don't care if you're going to sit in a parking lot or in your car. Go and at least look like you tried or you're trying. Or, just purely from now, on top of all this, now there's this thing that just happened, this pandemic, and literally now men have no work. A lot of men out there have lost their jobs. Yes, women have lost their jobs, but now you've got even qualified guys who now the degree used to make them the man, or then the woman they were with thought this man is different, because he's not this, he's not that, he's not sitting on his ass, he's gone to school, that's my man.
Yeah.
And now all that, those layers of what's supposed to make us
men have been unmasked, eh?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. In the book, I have a story where I have a conversation with a friend of mine, and I ask him, it was just at the beginning of lockdown, and I ask him, where's that new girlfriend of yours? And he says, no, I broke up with her. And I say, why? He says, because we're both freelancers, and she'd been talking about moving in, and what I realized is that we are not going to make money during this period, and it's going to be my problem. And she's going to look at me, and I don't need that burden. And it's that thing that masculinity is burdensome, right? It is this heavy burden, and why do we want to continue carrying this heavy burden?
Yes, Melusi, what I'm hearing you saying is we need to be challenging the status quo.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. And it makes me think of culture, doesn't matter whose culture, doesn't matter what culture, where you are, that actually informs the perceptions that we have about masculinity, and how one thing that is important about culture is that culture is fluid, it is dynamic. It is for us to always be flexible and to adapt. As things change, there will be certain ways of doing and certain notions that will change. And so the manner even in which we look at what a man is supposed to be, the provider, the strong macho male, that can still change. But with that being said, I'm now not saying that we now need to change the whole view as a whole. However, what I am saying is, yes, we will keep those basic tenets, those basic characteristics that make a man a man. But those other characteristics that do not necessarily work for the narrative of today have got to be challenged. So what it says to us, and what I hope we can, take out of this discussion just from this point, is that it is important to be flexible. It is important to actually read the context. What is happening? What can I do differently in order to adapt? Because more than anything else, my first function as a human being is to self-preserve. So for me to self-preserve, I need to do everything I can to maintain my emotional and psychological well-being. Because if I'm going to hold on to this previously held conventional, traditional notion of what a man looks like, so then it becomes very important for us to be that flexible. And this now brings me to another dynamic that was raised here, and that is of...
why do men feel emasculated? And I said, first of all, are they, or do they feel? Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah.
Or why, or what makes men end up being like, now I have no balls now, or even us jokingly saying to another man, Njayam, hi, you don't have balls now, or who's the man who has, who has the pants in this relationship. And again, going back to guys, and I'm speaking as a guy, obviously, and probably having participated in Mfetu, let's go and do this. Yo, let's hang out, or let's go play golf, or Masambe so proven. Some guys are like, no, I don't have a visa, or my wife won't let me, or I have to stay home, and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, come on, my man, who's the husband here? Or who's, who married who? You are being emasculated. I think in a way you've said a lot towards it, just from what starts all this thing. Now I'm supposed to be the man, and now I must go and express to my woman or wife or girlfriend or sister or mother and say, I'm going to do this. Because now me saying, can I go and do this? It then opens up the possibility that this woman might just grab my balls and say, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. And I don't know how much of that also contributed to, you spoke about your marriage, going through a divorce and your marriage ending. And I don't know if you had a lot of those things that you think, if I wasn't trying to be the man, maybe I'd still be married, or I'd still have whatever, I'd still be in this relationship. Or anything would be different, if that's anything that you went through.
I think in terms of my marriage, there are two people in a marriage, so I can't assume what which actions would have affected that other person, how, but yes, there are things where I feel I could have done X, Y, and Z better. There are things when I say, if I were to ever get into another relationship, I definitely would not do this to Mtana Bantu. But I cannot sit here and say if I'd done X, Y, and Z differently, that person wouldn't have done whatever they did. Do you know what I mean? It's not about that. But I think in terms of this emasculation, yes, there's the day-to-day, emasculation in relationships and whatever. But, conversation that I had with Professor Kopana Ratel, and, we were speaking about competing masculinities, right? So, you see, emasculation is also systemic. So men emasculate each other every day and on a global level. And that emasculation is what keeps the world turning and the ugly way it is. Women are just collateral damage, right? If you look at colonialism, it is one masculinity trying to overpower another. If you look at apartheid, it was one masculinity dominating and taking charge. When you look at the struggle for freedom, it is still masculinities trying to dominate other ones, right? I mean, if you look at the things that are happening in this country right now, it's just men trying to be in charge. You know what I mean? It's just, so how masculinity has, and it's not a natural thing. It's been framed this way, that we will compete against each other and will emasculate each other at every turn, right? And then what happens is that those emasculated men will try and find other avenues to prove their manhood. And that is the problem with things like unemployment, right? Those men feel useless, and those men, they feel useless as men, and those men will find other ways, right? They will go into crime, they will go home and beat their women because that makes me feel like a man. I'm not a man out in the streets because I'm unemployed, but you here, you will see me as a man. They treat you shit at work, you feel like less like a man, but when you get home, these children will know that I'm a man. So it is that concept that I was talking about earlier, that the way masculinity has been framed is dangerous, right? And if you can start looking at yourself as a human being, though, and value yourself as a human being, yes, there are things, masculinity is never gonna go away. It is ingrained. It is who we are. But if you are able to say, I'm a good human being, You know, I contribute to society, I do X, Y, and you don't have to be a fucking hippie. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is you start seeing value in yourself besides this tricky thing called masculinity.
Have you ever felt emasculated or any less of a man because you didn't have money at the time, or you don't have money, or you had less money than you've had before? Just from...
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, now going back to my marriage, and when it fell apart, my business wasn't doing well, you know, and so I was feeling shit as a husband and as a man, right, in that marriage. In fact, going back to lockdown, I was really happy that I went through lockdown without my wife. But you know, I was poor alone. There was no one to make me feel bad about being poor. And yes, so, you know, you do get emasculated. And even, you know, and that's why we end up in WhatsApp groups that are men only, you know, because as much as, you know, I don't want to blame women, but some of the things that we speak about, you can't speak about in front of women. You know, they will make you feel less than, right? So yes, there is that. There is that. And again, that's why I advocate for working on yourself. See, external forces will always be there. But if you fortify yourself, you fortify your spirit and you fortify your mind, you know, they're there, but fucking water of a duck's back. Seriously. And that's why, you know, I started doing work. I got myself a coach, you know, and then I started really dealing with some of the things. And thank God, because then I went back into 9 to 5 and I work for an assert. I hope he doesn't see this. But, you know, it doesn't affect me as much as if I hadn't started doing the work on myself. You know, I probably would have stabbed him. You know, I really would have. And speaking of stabbing, having done this work on myself, and it's ongoing, right? I had, in my teens, I acquired the okapi because that's just how we were living, you know. At 43 this year, I was moving house and I pulled it out of the, no, it's always there. I didn't find it. It's always there. And I looked at this thing and I said, I don't fucking need this thing. You know, I didn't move with it. I put it in the bin, you know, because I just like...
Okapi is a collector's
No.
item.
Mine represented something else. Mine represented something else, you know, and for me, it was closing that chapter of Melusi as a man and what he thinks manhood is.
Melusi, so I don't know if I'm hearing you correctly. If you can just take it back for me, the time when you attained the okapi, was it a way of you asserting your manhood, even at the time?
Yes.
Young as you were.
Yes.
Out in the streets.
Out 40 for me, it was an interesting one because I'd gotten a bursary to go to a private school. And I felt emasculated even as a teenage boy. And so then this other persona, this Bantsula persona was what? So they had money, but I was the fucking man. And I would not be fucked with. Yes. So hence I was saying, you find other things. If one thing doesn't prop up your masculinity, you find something else. You know,
So I'm going to ask Lusanda with your MBCCHSXYZ, and obviously from a psyched perspective, I pick up the phone or I go online and I try and get a therapist or a psychologist. I've had maybe 2 or 3 sessions with a psychologist or therapist in my entire 43 years, right? And I went for a specific reason. So I had a starting, this is why I'm here. Now, under general of, I want to be well, I want to get better. If I log on and Lusanda responds, or one of the therapists at site says, how can I help you? You know, and I say, I'm trying to be emotionally well as a man. Are you going to say, are you feeling emasculated, or is this why you contacted us? Like, where does one begin? Because that's what I want to know now. We're having this conversation. So if I now decide, okay, let me do something, because I think there's also a problem of, is there something wrong with me? Or do I have to wait for something to be wrong with me for me to say, I'm now going to work on myself?
Right.
So for instance, having a coach or a life coach, I think for some people, it still looks like you first have to fail. You're failing at something, and now someone has to come and fix you. As opposed to, in fact, while you are at your best is when you should probably be like, let me see how better I can get. If I had
that type of support.
Or support.
David, I think as a starting off point, it's important that we understand that even before you start reaching out to psyched and saying, I need to be speaking to a therapist, we need to understand, how am I going to know as a man that I'm not okay? How am I going to know that I need to be speaking to someone? Because again, remember, this is a narrative that we did not grow up with. Regardless of the culture, it was always, you keep it in the house, in the family, whatever is going on. But with so much pressure that we are faced with as human beings as a whole, we are expected, we are being called to get to a point where we start to have relationships with our inner selves. Just like how Melusi stated it, there is him, human being, and then there is the men out there, the man that he is. So for him, he firstly sees himself as a human being. And that is exactly what we hope that people out there can learn. Take it back a bit and just ask yourself, today is, what day is it? Friday. Why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling like I've got this headache that's not going away? Isugapi. Why do I want to be saying to my friend or to my colleague that I'm feeling down? What is down? Where's that coming from? As much as I don't necessarily have a reason for it, what your body is communicating to you, your spirit, it's saying to you, you're out of sync. There is something that is not gelling. So you now need to find a balance of sorts. That is good enough for you to say, I need to speak to someone. You do not necessarily need to say, I think I am depressed. I think I've got anxiety. That's just too many big words that you don't necessarily have to be using to diagnose yourself. Because if you do that on your own, you run the risk of feeling guilty, feeling, bad about yourself and starting to talk negatively to yourself. So the fact that you just feel out of sync, anchor right, is good enough for you to say, I'm booking a session. I need to be speaking to someone. Hey, they're psyched. Let me log on. Let me create a profile. Let me book a session. Here's a therapist of my choice. Let me get to that session and say, I'm not okay. So no, David, to answer the latter part of your question, you're not going to get to the session and have me as Lusanda saying to you, so you are feeling emasculated. That will sound as if I'm judging you. That will sound as if I don't have empathy. What I need to know is, who is David today? What is happening today?
Okay.
What is going on? What is going on around you as a person? And that, David, is part of you finding a way to change the narrative, where you are now starting to learn that, actually, I matter. Let's leave what society says for a second. It's important. We are not dismissing it, but we are saying, I need to have that internal conversation. I actually now matter.
We're gonna have to let go of Melusi because he's busy. So for us to just wrap it up, I think we did then go into emotional wellness for men, and I think there's a lot of things he said, and in a way he answered some of the questions that we had, and you and I will continue maybe for a few more minutes, but I just want to say, bruh, like I said, we've known each other. I moved to Joburg in 2000, and I think we're hanging around 2001, 2002. So that's almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And over the years, your now ex-wife has been friends with my wife forever, kids' birthdays, and I had snippets and highlights of your life, most of them dodgy. Most of them very tricky. I've never judged you in any way, you know. I always wished, those guys, we must make time. And I'm telling you, the few minutes or almost an hour we've spent in here together, for me, it just makes me so fucking happy to see you like this and to see you here. And thanks for being here.
No,
and I'm now the one learning from you. Some of us look like we're okay constantly, or everything is perfect. You know, but I'm telling you, just listening to you for the past couple of minutes has definitely done something for me.
No, thank you, the brother. Thank you for inviting me, man. You know, and I think one of the last things I'm going to say also is one of the trickier things around masculinity, and it's not just masculinity, it's any cloak that we put ourselves on ourselves, is that we don't allow ourselves to be our true selves, right? And so I find that guy that you knew, that wasn't me, man. You know, it was a role that I was playing because I felt that's the role that I should play as a man.
It's part of the old,
you know. And as I started going, no, man, you know, that's why I started writing so late in my life. A lot of the things that I'm doing now, you know, felt too sissy-like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, no, who does that? Who sits and writes, you know? But as you start just coming into yourself, and so even with this book, you know, I'm trying to get it into schools because we want men to come into themselves much earlier. And get rid of this veil much earlier. But at the same time also, you know, you hear us saying we must raise better sons, which is fantastic. But a lot of people use that as an excuse not to work on themselves. And here's the thing, if you're 40 years old and you're going to die at 40, there's 40 more years of you and being a bullshit human being. So let's not just raise better sons. Let's work at 80. Let's work on ourselves. You know, let's not just say, better sons. You, the brother, you. In fact, you are the one that the women at work are complaining about. You know, you are the one that the women at church are complaining about. You raising a better son doesn't solve this current problem. So you need to work on yourself.
Be intentional.
Yes.
Every single day.
Yeah, try. I mean,
that's the ideal. You know, it's small little things that you can do as a human being, as a male, just to be in tune with yourself. Just to have that understanding that I, as a man, can do differently. I, as a man, can change the narrative. I think that's what I'm hearing more than anything else. Melusi, it's been an insightful discussion. Thank you so much. It's been an eye-opener from my side with my MBH, M something. Nevertheless, I learned as well.
No, I never.
Your social media handles?
Completely not related to this.
No.
I'm on Facebook just as Melusi Tshabalala, and then there's Everyday Zulu.
Yeah.
And then I'm on Twitter as Mshengumel and Instagram as Mshengumel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, bro.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate the opportunity.
So I think Melusi covered a lot of the things actually we wanted to talk about. Even without us necessarily going through them, you know, bullet point. And even a little bit in having to now express your manhood and your masculinity at work.
Yes.
You know, on everyone else. I mean, I've been, you know, just outside of just being in the entertainment business, I've been on movie sets and film sets or TV shows sets where for the past 10, 11 years, the person who runs my production company is a woman. You know, I mean, she's been working for me since she was 21. And for the past 5 to 7 years, she's at a point I would be out of the country and she would deliver a movie to Mnet or Mzansi Magic or whatever, you know. But that meant she has to now basically be the boss to the directors, the writers, whoever is working on set, the camera guys, the actors, the comedians that I mentor, that obviously would think they mean so much because they are the talent, or I brought them because I think there's talent, and maybe some then would think they can also break some rules or behave a certain way. So definitely, again, whether it's intentional or not intentional, there would be times where she'd be like, you can't talk to me like this, or this person can't talk to me like this, or I want nothing to do with this guy, you know, because we still do that as men, where you leave your house or wherever you come from, and you go to work, and then you start thinking or behaving in a certain way where you think just because you are a guy or you are a man, it's okay. Which is a thing that some point, some of us or some men, we have to go and ask for help or find out, okay, how do I deal with this? Which then I think is where you have all these cases of sexual harassment, or some are misunderstanding, or some, you know, or again, men just withdraw. So now your colleague no longer talks to you or arrives on set without greeting you or without saying anything. And, you know, but you're still supposed to talk, just supposed to work together and deliver something.
Yeah. You know, what you're referring to, David, is very important because last week, when we started the conversation in our last episode of mental wellness in the workplace, this, what you speak to, is us now starting to unpack what that looks like. And here, what you refer to from where I'm sitting is the concept of toxic masculinity. And that is one of the great dividers, chaos causing destabilizers within a work context. It is just that it's not so much spoken about as other things, but you've just given me an example here of something that has happened that actually speaks to this, of a male or males who come from society, who hold certain perceptions about what should happen, you know, the role of power, who should be in charge, and how then they would struggle to respond in a contextual manner to the female who would have been in charge at the time. And this is the reality even in corporates. You see it in government departments where there's a struggle sometimes for males to respond, you know, accordingly when they've got a female boss. This is a thing that you see sometimes in corporate where the female colleague gets reduced to be the one who does tea for the guys. You know, sometimes it's the subtle things where it's not so much that they are being aggressive overtly, but where they'll just do certain things where if female boss, for example, gives an instruction, yes, the instruction will be carried out, but behind her back, there'll be those snide remarks amongst the male colleagues, you know, to say, who does she think she is? And when you start to interrogate where that actually comes from, it comes from this toxic masculinity. It comes from males coming from contexts where they are not taught, you know, the importance of looking at the context, looking at their own blind spots, looking at their own insecurities, because this comes from an insecurity where a male now has this notion that they need to continuously be dominating. And if they're not dominating within the work context, what they will do is they will devalue the female counterpart, be it a boss, be it a colleague who's at the same level as they are. We see this quite a lot. And what for me is important, you know, as psyched, is corporates, departments, business, organizations have got a role to play. Because they will see divisions in their workplaces which will have a direct impact on productivity and inevitably the success of the business, but don't understand what exactly has happened. So what we're saying is, hey, Mr. Boss, Mrs. Boss, how about you go back to the workforce? Do some sort of an analysis. Find out what is happening, because that is where you find a lot of reports of sexual harassment in different forms. You know, you want to be asking what is happening. How can I, as the employer, ensure that this equity that is part of my values is actually upheld? Because it is these workers who will uphold your values as an employer. Find out what is happening. put measures in place, train if you need to, call a life coach if you must, call a psychologist, call someone, anyone, call psyched. We are there. And we will answer to this, and we will capacitate, we will psychoeducate the workers on what is the correct way. And in those interactions, it's actually where you start to suss out that actually, no, the reason why David does this to Gwen is because David has got issues. Perhaps David is a candidate for individual therapy. So by so doing, you're actually helping David, who already may have a mental illness.
Also.
Yes. And, when we do this, that's very important to understand that everything is confidential. So no one is going to know that actually it is David versus Lusanda. When we carry out such things, where we give you questionnaires, we carry out studies, we do it with corporates actually, where we find out what is happening, and whatever responses we get, they're anonymous. So we never go back to Mr. Boss and say, David says that he peeps at the ladies.
He will just see the results.
Yes, and then that informs intervention.
I think what's important is then people must understand, coming from psyched, you don't have to wait to think you have a problem to go to the app or to the website. And it's like going for a checkup or going to a doctor, whether it's your annual checkup or you just going because you just want to know you're fine. Or you go for something else and you're like, oh, doctor, can you also check my this, even though I came for this, So I think it's important for people to know it's okay to see someone and just say, I'm just here to make sure I'm okay. It's literally like, taking a car for service. You take the car in because you're supposed to take it every so many kilometers. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with the car every that few kilometers. They call you back and say, oh yeah, we picked up this and that and that and that and da. Do you want us to fix this now? Or this is how much it's going to cost? Should we go ahead and do it? Do you want to bring it back another time? And maybe a car is the easier example, and you know what, I'll bring it another time, or I don't have time today because I need it at 12, or I was expecting it at 4. I can't leave it overnight or over the weekend. And I think then we need to do the same for ourselves. We all just need to chat to someone, I was doing a gig somewhere yesterday, and I was saying, typically when people call me for a booking, people are still like, oh, someone is looking for a comedian or an MC. And then I'm like, calm down. What is it? Is it a corporate thing? Is it a company? Are they in the same room? Or are they online? Are they at home? Because then I start going, has any of them lost a loved one during this time or during this pandemic? And then the person starts going, oh, people will just come to work and say, sorry, colleagues, I can't make it, or please excuse me for the next 2 days. You don't know if they're going to a funeral, or you don't know if they lost someone, right? Because they don't say anything. But also they were not asked. There wasn't, is everything okay? Where, do you even, people think I can't even ask, or I shouldn't ask, or it's none of my business. But if you're running a business, it's your business to know, that so-and-so has had a loss. Guys, let's be there for them. There's always some people are able to make donations. Some people are in a position where they actually need help just to get through that 2-3 days or that funeral or whatever it is that has happened in their lives, right? So I think it's important to say, let's not wait till you think you are falling apart and you're crashing down and your world is, falling apart. Just find out, talk to someone, and get psyched on life with Lusanda and David Cow.
And that's it, David. That's it. We want people to get psyched on life. And the only way that you can do that is when you are intentional about all the efforts that you make. At checking yourself, at maintaining yourself. Maintain that emotional vehicle that is keeping you running. Maintain that psychological engine that is running, that actually keeps you from day to day. So the only way that you do that is not so much about pathologizing. It's not about saying there's something wrong, but it's just saying, hey, let me just go and get it checked out. That is why we do wellness. That is exactly what wellness is. It's just saying, hey, I'm here. What's happening? Let's just reflect. Let's just look at what is currently happening. It's like, speaking to a therapist is like having someone hold a mirror in front of you where you get a chance to actually look at yourself and just check yourself and reflect if you're still fine with what is going on. And this is what exactly we advocate for individuals, for businesses,
for groups,
at church,
Stockfells,
someone
churches.
out there. Speak to someone, make a plan, take the first step to get psyched on life.
Thank you. And I must stress, I'm a stand-up comedian. She's the doctor. I just want to stress that. She's actually a fully qualified doctor. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you once again. I had fun.
Yeah, same here, David. Thank you so much. It's Lusanda here, the psychologist. The psyched shrink is what I call myself.
So what's your actual qualification?
All right. I am qualified as a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
Yes, that is who I am.
Okay.
And all what I stand for is wellness.
Okay.
And that is why I'm with Psyched. And that is why
That's why I'm here.
Yes, you and I are busy saying to people, get psyched on life. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. We look forward to the next one. One episode at a time, we will destigmatize mental health. Thank you, David.
Oh, well. No, thank you.
Please subscribe and share with your contacts so we can help more people facing mental health challenges. You can find us at www.psyched.co.za. This was the Get Psyched on Life podcast, brought to you by Psyched.